Hello everyone, never thought I'd be the guy writing something like this. You read these kinds of stories online and think, that could never happen to me. But here I am, sitting in my half-empty living room, trying to put my thoughts into words because maybe writing it down will help me make sense of it all. My wife, Emma, and I have been married for 6 years. We met at a friend's wedding. She was a bridesmaid, I was a groomsman. It sounds cliché, I know, but it felt like fate. She was vibrant, confident, and had a laugh that could light up a room. We dated for 2 years before getting married. Life was good, or at least I thought it was. The first signs that something was off were subtle. Emma started spending more time volunteering at community events. She said it helped her feel more connected, that she needed an outlet outside of work. I supported it. Why wouldn't I? Everyone needs a hobby, right? But then the late nights started. The last-minute meetings and emergency calls. She'd come home exhausted, sometimes with a faint smell of smoke clinging to her clothes. She said it was from the bonfires they'd have during safety drills with the local fire department, part of the community outreach. At first, I believed her. I mean, why wouldn't I? We had always been open with each other. But then her phone became a permanent fixture in her hand. She started locking it, which she never did before. She laughed at messages she wouldn't show me and grew defensive whenever I asked simple questions about her day. It was like there was this invisible wall between us, one I couldn't break through no matter how hard I tried. The turning point came on a random Tuesday night. Emma had left her phone on the coffee table while she was in the shower. I stared at it, the curiosity gnawing at me. My heart raced as I picked it up, half hoping to find nothing, to confirm that it was all in my head. But the moment I unlocked it, my world shifted. There were messages from someone named Jake F. I scrolled, my stomach tightening with every word. I can't stop thinking about last night. You looked amazing in my jacket. Wish you were here right now. I miss you. My hands shook. Jake wasn't just some guy. He was a firefighter Emma had mentioned in passing, someone she claimed was just a friend from her volunteer group. The photos hit harder than the words. Selfies of them together, smiles too intimate to be innocent, one of her wearing his fire department jacket. I put the phone down, my mind racing. Anger, disbelief, heartbreak, it all hit me at once. When Emma came out of the shower, wrapped in a towel, acting like everything was normal, I felt like I was looking at a stranger. I didn't confront her that night. I needed time to process, to figure out what to say, how to even begin a conversation that would shatter the life I thought we had. The next morning felt like stepping onto a stage, pretending everything was normal while my mind replayed those messages over and over. Emma moved around the kitchen, pouring coffee, humming softly like she hadn't torn our marriage apart with every secret text. I watched her, trying to find traces of guilt on her face, but she looked the same, effortlessly composed, her smile casual, like nothing had changed. Except for me, everything had. I decided I couldn't sit on it any longer. After dinner that evening, when she was scrolling through her phone on the couch, I finally spoke. We need to talk. She glanced up, her expression shifting slightly, maybe sensing the weight behind my words. About what? I took a deep breath, feeling my heart pound in my chest. Jake F. For a second, just a split second, her face went blank. Then she laughed, a short, dismissive sound. What about him? I stared at her, not backing down. I saw the messages. The color drained from her face, but she recovered quickly, her expression morphing into irritation. You went through my phone? Seriously? That's a huge invasion of privacy. Of course, she flipped it, turning the spotlight on me like I was the one who did something wrong. I tried to stay calm. Don't turn this around. I saw what you wrote, the photos. Just tell me the truth. She rolled her eyes and crossed her arms, the defensiveness oozing off her. It's not what you think. We're just friends. We joke around. It's harmless. Harmless? My voice cracked, disbelief surging. You miss him? You can't stop thinking about last night? That's harmless? She sighed dramatically, like I was exhausting her. You're overreacting. It's not like I'm having an affair. The words stung because they weren't just a lie, they were a refusal to even acknowledge the damage. I stood up, needing space from her, from this version of her I didn't recognize. Are you sleeping with him? Silence. That hesitation, it was louder than any confession. Finally, she muttered, it was a mistake. It happened once. It didn't mean anything. The world felt like it tilted. Once. Like that made it better. Like reducing it to a single incident erased the betrayal etched into every word, every photo, every lie that I didn't yell. I didn't throw anything. I just stood there, staring at her, feeling the weight of 7 years crumble around me. I'm staying at Mark's for a while, I said quietly, grabbing my keys. She didn't stop me. Didn't apologize. Just sat there, scrolling through her phone again as if our marriage wasn't collapsing in real time. Leaving our apartment felt surreal, like I was stepping out of my own life and into someone else's nightmare. The familiar streets seemed unfamiliar, blurred by the haze of betrayal clouding my mind. I didn't have a plan, no idea where to go, I just drove. The city lights passed me in streaks until I finally pulled up to my best friend Mark's apartment. I didn't call ahead. I didn't need to. Mark has always been that friend who didn't require explanations. When he opened the door, one look at my face was enough. No questions, just a nod, and he stepped aside to let me in. I dropped my duffel bag by the door and sank onto his couch, the reality of everything hitting me like a ton of bricks. I had just walked out of my marriage, but the weight of what I'd left behind was still sitting heavily on my chest. That first night was brutal. Sleep didn't come. My mind replayed everything on an endless loop, the texts, Emma's indifferent expression, the way she casually scrolled through her phone after I told her I was leaving. I thought the betrayal itself would be the worst part, but it wasn't. It was her complete lack of remorse, like our years together were just background noise to her double life. Over the next few days, I moved through life in a fog. I showed up to work, pretending to be fine, making small talk with coworkers while feeling like I was barely holding myself together. Mark didn't pry. He just made sure I had food, a place to crash, and space when I needed it. Sometimes, that's all you need, a friend who knows when to be silent. Emma texted me the day after I left, are you really not going to talk to me? We need to figure this out. You're blowing this out of proportion. I stared at my phone, the words burning into my brain. Blowing it out of proportion? As if her betrayal was some minor hiccup we could just brush aside. I didn't respond. What was there to say? Days turned into a week. Then came the long message, I know I messed up. But don't you think we can work through this? We've built a life together. Isn't that worth something? The audacity. She wasn't sorry for what she did, she was sorry she got caught. Sorry that her comfortable life was disrupted. It wasn't about me, it was about the inconvenience of facing the consequences. I started going to therapy after Mark suggested it. At first, I hated the idea. Talking to a stranger about my personal life felt pointless. But sitting there, saying things out loud that I'd only been screaming inside my head, was different. It was like opening a valve on a pressure cooker. I realized I wasn't just grieving Emma's betrayal, I was grieving the future I thought we had, the version of her I believed in, and the man I was before all of this. Therapy turned out to be the unexpected anchor I didn't know I needed. Sitting in that small, quiet room, facing someone who didn't know me or Emma, stripped away all the noise. There were no pretenses, no masks, just raw, unfiltered emotions spilling out. I wasn't just angry at Emma, I was angry at myself. Angry for missing the signs, for trusting too easily, for holding on to a version of her that never really existed. The therapist said something that stuck with me, you're not grieving her. You're grieving the idea of her. That hit harder than any of Emma's texts. It was true. I had been clinging to the memories of our early days, the laughter, the spontaneous road trips, the nights we'd stay up talking about nothing. But that woman was gone long before I found those messages. Maybe she was never really there to begin with. Emma kept texting, "I miss you. Can we talk? You're being stubborn. We can fix this. Are you seriously going to throw everything away over one mistake?" One mistake. That phrase haunted me. Reducing an entire betrayal to a mistake felt like she was erasing the depth of what she'd done. A mistake is forgetting to buy milk, not building a secret relationship behind your husband's back. That I never responded. Instead, I focused on rebuilding what she tried to break me. I moved out of Mark's place after a few weeks and got my own small apartment. It wasn't much, but it was mine. Every piece of furniture, every photo on the wall, was chosen by me, for me. No reminders of the life I left behind. That I started running again. It sounds cliché, but there's something therapeutic about hitting the pavement, feeling your heart race for reasons you can control. Each mile felt like shedding layers of anger, guilt, and sadness. I wasn't running from the past. I was running toward a future where Emma was just a footnote. Then, one day, out of nowhere, Emma showed up at my door. She stood there, looking almost exactly the same, but everything about her felt different. She had that familiar, rehearsed look of concern, like she'd practiced her lines before knocking. "I just want to talk," she said. That I let her in, not because I wanted to hear her out, but because I needed to hear it for myself, to confirm that the closure I'd been searching for wasn't something she could give me. She apologized. She cried. She said she missed me, that she was lonely, that Jake didn't mean anything. It was everything I thought I wanted to hear months ago. But sitting there, listening to her, I felt nothing. No anger. No sadness. Just emptiness. Like she was a stranger, recounting a story I no longer cared about. When she finished, I stood up, walked to the door, and said, "I've already forgiven you. But that doesn't mean I want you back." Her face crumbled, but I didn't. I had already done the hard part. I'd let go. After Emma left that day, standing there in the hallway with tears she thought might sway me, I closed the door and felt something I hadn't experienced in months: relief. Not the shaky, temporary kind you get when avoiding confrontation, but the deep, settling kind that tells you, you're finally freed. It wasn't that her apology didn't matter. In a way, it did. But not for the reasons she hoped. Hearing her say the words, watching her scramble to patch together excuses masked as regret, it confirmed what I already knew. She was sorry she got caught, not for what she did, and that was the final piece I needed. Not closure from her, but confirmation that I had already closed that chapter myself. The days that followed were surprisingly peaceful. There was no more waiting for texts, no more wondering if I'd run into her somewhere, no more checking my phone out of habit. The ghost of our marriage had finally left the room. I poured myself into rebuilding my life, not the life we had, but the one I was supposed to have before it got tangled up in her web of lies. I redecorated my apartment. I threw out anything that reminded me of her old photos, gifts, even the mugs she loved. It wasn't about erasing the past, it was about creating space for my future. I started new hobbies. Things I never made time for when I was busy trying to keep our marriage afloat. Photography, hiking, even cooking real meals instead of just heating up leftovers. It felt good to create without her shadow looming over me. I reconnected with old friends. The ones I'd drifted from because Emma always found reasons why we didn't have time for them. Turns out, real friends don't disappear when life gets hard. They show up. One evening, sitting alone on my balcony with a cup of coffee, I realized something that hit harder than any of Emma's betrayals. I had been lost long before she cheated. Our marriage wasn't perfect, even before Jake entered the picture. I had ignored the red flags, smoothed over the cracks, and convinced myself that love was enough to hold us together. But love isn't supposed to be hard work every single day. It's not supposed to feel like a job you're scared to get fired from. Emma's affair didn't break me. It woke me up. It taught me that you can't fix someone who doesn't want to be fixed. No matter how much love, time, or patience you pour into them, trust your instincts. If something feels off, it probably is. Don't let hope blind you to reality. Being alone isn't the worst thing. Staying with the wrong person is. Months passed. The seasons changed. And with them, so did I. I met someone new. Not in a dramatic, movie-like way. It was simple. At a coffee shop, of all places. Her name was Lily. She smiled like she meant it, asked about my day and actually listened, laughed at my dumb jokes without pretending. It wasn't fireworks and grand gestures, it was peaceful. And that's what made it different. For the first time, I wasn't looking for someone to fix me or fill the emptiness Emma left behind. I wasn't comparing, wasn't clinging. I was just present, and that's when I knew I had healed, not because I'd found someone new, but because I no longer carried the weight of someone old. If you're reading this, wondering if you'll ever get over the betrayal, the heartbreak, the sleepless nights, you will. It won't happen all at once. It'll be in small moments, the first time you laugh without forcing it, the first morning you wake up and don't check your phone out of habit, the first day you realize you didn't think about them at all. Betrayal feels like the end of the world when you're in it. But looking back, I realize now it was just the beginning, and I've never been more grateful. Time has a strange way of healing wounds, not by erasing the scars but by making them part of your story, without letting them define you. That's where I found myself months after Emma's betrayal, not completely healed, because I don't think you ever fully heal from something like that, but whole again in a way I hadn't been for years. Peace didn't come in some grand, cinematic moment. It wasn't about revenge or dramatic confrontations. It crept in quietly, like the warmth of the sun after a long winter, subtle enough that I didn't realize it was there until one day I woke up and felt, okay. No heavy chest, no bitter thoughts, just okay. I realized I hadn't thought about Emma in weeks. Not with anger, not with sadness, just indifference. And that indifference? That was freedom. Not hating her, not missing her, just not caring. She became like background noise in a life I was no longer living. I thought the chapter was closed for good. But life, as it often does, had one more twist. One evening, I got a message from Emma. No dramatic build-up, just a simple notification on my phone, her name lighting up like a relic from the past. I saw your photos online. You look happy. I'm glad you're doing well. No apology. No acknowledgement of the damage she caused. Just a hollow, polite message, as if we were old acquaintances who drifted apart naturally. I stared at the screen for a minute, debating whether to respond. But then it hit me, I didn't owe her anything. Not a reply, not closure, not even acknowledgement. My silence was louder than any words I could have typed. So, I deleted the message without responding, and in that moment, I felt lighter than I ever had before. Moving on isn't about pretending the past didn't happen. It's about accepting that it did and realizing it no longer has power over you. I started living life on my own terms. I traveled places Emma never wanted to go because they weren't her thing. Turns out, they were very much my thing. I reconnected with family relationships I'd unintentionally neglected because I was too busy holding together a marriage that was falling apart. I laughed more real, belly-deep laughter that didn't feel forced or guarded. Lily, the woman I met at the coffee shop, became part of my story. But she wasn't my happy ending. I was. She complemented a life I had already rebuilt for myself. And that's the difference. She wasn't there to fix me. I was already whole. If there's one thing I've learned through all of this, it's that betrayal doesn't define you, your response to it does. It's okay to grieve. Not just the person, but the future you thought you had. You don't need closure from the person who hurt you. The fact that they're gone is closure enough. Your worth isn't tied to someone else's ability to value you. You're not broken because they couldn't see your worth. Forgiveness is for you, not them. And sometimes, forgiveness looks like moving on without ever saying the words out loud. If you're reading this, knee-deep in heartbreak, wondering if you'll ever feel normal again, you will. It'll take time. It'll hurt. But one day, you'll wake up, and it won't. You'll breathe without the weight. You'll laugh without the echo of pain. You'll live not despite what happened, but because you grew through it. Emma was a chapter, not the whole book, and I'm finally writing the rest. I never imagined life after Emma would feel like this, not just better, but completely different in ways I couldn't have predicted. It's strange how, when you're trapped in the middle of heartbreak, you convince yourself that the pain will never end. But here I am, standing on the other side, realizing that the pain didn't just fade, it transformed me. They say adversity reveals character, and maybe that's true. But I think it also builds character. Every sleepless night, every moment of doubt, every painful reminder they weren't just obstacles. They were lessons disguised as heartbreak that I learned that I'm stronger than I thought. There were days when I didn't think I'd get through, when the weight of betrayal felt unbearable. But I did. Not because someone saved me, but because I saved me. That I don't need validation from anyone. For years, I'd unconsciously sought Emma's approval, bending parts of myself to fit into her world. Now, I live for me. My opinions, my passions, they're enough. Joy is in the little things. A quiet morning coffee, a long walk with no destination, a spontaneous road trip, all simple, yet fulfilling in ways I never appreciated before. That I didn't just move on, I rebuilt. Life after betrayal isn't about returning to who you were, it's about becoming someone new, someone wiser. That I changed careers. Emma always pushed me toward stability, routines that felt safe but suffocating. After the dust settled, I realized I wasn't happy. So, I took a risk, switched paths, and found work that actually excites me. That I moved. New city, new apartment, new everything. It wasn't about running away, it was about creating a space that reflected who I'd become, not who I used to be. That I surrounded myself with people who mattered. Real friends, genuine connections, no more tolerating surface-level relationships just because they were convenient. Life has a twisted sense of humor, because just when I thought Emma was completely out of my story, I ran into her. It wasn't planned. I was at a bookstore, flipping through a novel, when I heard a familiar voice behind me. That I turned, and there she was. For a moment, time felt like it slowed. Not because I missed her, far from it, but because I realized how much had changed. She looked the same, but I didn't feel that old ache, that sting of what if. I felt nothing. She smiled awkwardly. Hey. Wow, it's been a while. I nodded, polite but distant. Yeah. It has. There was a pause. She probably expected more, a conversation, maybe even an apology session. But I didn't owe her that. After a moment, she said, "You look good." Happy. And that's when it hit me. I was happy. Not because of her absence, but because of the life I'd built since she left it. That I smiled back. I am. Then I turned and walked away, feeling lighter than ever. That encounter wasn't dramatic. No heated exchange, no closure-seeking conversation. Just a brief moment in time that showed me how far I'd come. Healing isn't a destination, it's a journey. And sometimes, you don't realize how far you've traveled until you glance back. Emma was a chapter, but I'm the author. And the pages ahead? They're filled with stories she'll never be part of. Life has a funny way of surprising you when you least expect it. After that brief encounter with Emma, I thought I might feel something: nostalgia, sadness, maybe even anger, but instead, all I felt was clarity. It was like meeting a stranger who just happened to have played a part in a story I'd long since finished reading. After that day, something shifted. It wasn't dramatic, like flipping a switch, but more like the final thread of an old tapestry quietly unraveling. I realized I had been carrying the faint echoes of our past without even knowing it. Seeing her, hearing her voice, confirmed what I had suspected. I wasn't holding on to her anymore. That I was holding on to who I used to be with her. But that version of me didn't exist anymore. I'd outgrown him, just like I'd outgrown the relationship that once defined my world. Around this time, my connection with Lily, the woman I met at the coffee shop, started to grow deeper. It wasn't a whirlwind romance or some grand, cinematic love story. It was simple. Natural. Easy. And that's exactly what made it feel so real. Lily wasn't a distraction from my past. She was proof that I'd healed enough to open up again. She didn't fill a void because I'd already done the hard work of filling it myself. Being with her wasn't about escaping pain, it was about sharing peace. With Emma, love felt like walking on a tightrope, balancing, adjusting, hoping not to fall. With Lily, love felt like solid ground. We'd spend hours talking about everything and nothing: music, books, dreams we hadn't told anyone else. There were no mind games, no second guessing. Just two people who genuinely enjoyed each other's company, and for the first time in a long time, I felt seen. Not as someone's husband, not as someone recovering from betrayal, but as me. One evening, we sat on the beach, watching the sun dip below the horizon. The sky was painted with shades of orange and pink, and for a moment, the silence between us was louder than words. Lily turned to me and asked, "Do you ever think about your past?" I paused, thinking about how to answer honestly. "Sometimes," I admitted. "But not in the way I used to. It's like looking at an old photograph. I remember it, but it doesn't feel like it's part of me anymore." She nodded, understanding without needing me to explain further, and that's when it hit me: the past doesn't disappear. It just loses its power over you. Happiness isn't about erasing the pain or pretending it never happened. It's about learning from it, growing through it, and realizing you're not defined by it. I found happiness in quiet mornings, brewing coffee in my own kitchen, no ghosts lurking in the corners. I found it in spontaneous road trips, blasting music with the windows down, feeling free in a way I never did before. I found it in friendships that didn't come with conditions. People who knew the worst parts of my story but still saw me as whole, and most importantly, I found happiness in myself. Looking back, Emma's betrayal wasn't the worst thing that ever happened to me. It was the best thing that ever happened for me. It forced me to confront parts of myself I'd ignored for years. It pushed me to grow, to heal, to become someone I genuinely like being. She was a lesson, not a loss. A chapter, not the whole story. A detour, not the destination. And now? I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. It's strange how life has a way of pulling you forward, even when you think you're standing still. After everything with Emma, I thought closure would come from some grand moment: an apology, a confrontation, maybe even a breakdown where she'd admit everything and I'd finally feel vindicated. But the truth? Closure wasn't a moment. It was a process, and I realized it wasn't something she could give me. It was something I had to find on my own. As things with Lily grew deeper, I found myself facing a new challenge: not dealing with heartbreak, but learning how to truly be present in a relationship again. You don't realize how much emotional baggage you carry until you're standing in front of someone new, trying not to let old wounds bleed into something fresh. Lily was patient with me, even when I wasn't patient with myself. She never made me feel like I was too much or not enough. There were no comparisons to Emma, no hidden expectations. Just space to be vulnerable, to heal, to trust again. But even with all the growth, there were moments of doubt. Sometimes, I'd catch myself overthinking the little things: a delayed text, a change in her tone, and I'd spiral for a second, that old fear creeping in: what if it happens again? But then I'd stop. I'd breathe. And I'd remind myself, Lily isn't Emma. This isn't the past repeating itself. It's new, different, and real. One day, out of nowhere, I got an invitation to a mutual friend's party. The kind of event where you'll probably run into people from your past. I hesitated, debating whether to go. But something in me, maybe curiosity, maybe the desire to prove to myself how far I'd come, pushed me to say yes. And, of course, Emma was there. She looked the same, but different. Maybe it was her, or maybe it was just me seeing her without the lens of nostalgia. We made eye contact briefly, a silent acknowledgement of everything left unsaid. She smiled, a small, polite curve of her lips, and I nodded back. No tension, no awkwardness. Just two people who used to know each other. Lily was with me, holding my hand, laughing with our friends. And for the first time, I didn't feel like I was in Emma's shadow. I wasn't comparing. I wasn't pretending. I was just there. Fully present. Emma approached me later, a casual, "Hey, how have you been?" And I answered honestly, "Good. Really good." She nodded, her smile fading just slightly, like she could see it, the peace I'd found without her. We talked for a minute, small talk about work and mutual friends, but it was hollow. The connection we once had? Gone. Not bitter, not sad. Just gone. When she walked away, I turned to Lily, who gave me a knowing look. No questions, no jealousy. Just understanding. And that's when I knew I'd truly let go. Closure isn't a conversation. It's not about getting the answers you think you need. It's about realizing you don't need them anymore. Emma's betrayal taught me that people will hurt you, but you get to choose how long you carry that hurt. Healing isn't linear. Some days, you'll feel like you've moved on. Other days, old memories sneak up. Both are okay. You don't have to forgive to forget, but sometimes forgiveness is the key to freeing yourself, and most importantly, you are not what happened to you. You're who you become because of it. That night, walking home with Lily, I felt lighter than I had in years. Not because I'd faced Emma, but because I realized she wasn't my story's final chapter. She was just a paragraph, and my story? It's still being written. As more time passed, I realized that healing from betrayal isn't about getting over it, like flipping a switch. It's about outgrowing it. Like an old shirt that no longer fits, the weight of Emma's betrayal felt distant, something that once clung tightly to me but now hung loosely, irrelevant to the life I'd built since. There was a time when I thought peace would come from answers, understanding why she did what she did, dissecting every moment of our relationship to figure out where it went wrong. But standing here now, I know that peace isn't about answers. It's about acceptance that I never got all the answers, and that's okay. Because even if Emma had given me a full confession, it wouldn't have changed the past. It wouldn't have healed the cracks. What healed me was realizing I didn't need that closure from her. I created it for myself. Happiness used to feel like a destination, like something you achieve once everything falls perfectly into place. A perfect relationship, a stable career, no drama, no pain. But life doesn't work like that. Happiness isn't a destination, it's a practice. It's in the little things: waking up without a pit in my stomach, drinking coffee on my balcony, watching the sunrise, feeling grateful for a new day, laughing with friends without that lingering shadow of heartbreak. Being with Lily, not needing her to fix me because I wasn't broken to begin with. I realized that I'd spent so long focusing on the pain of betrayal that I forgot what it was like to simply exist without it. And now, I do. There's always a temptation to wonder, what if things had been different? What if she hadn't cheated? What if I'd done something differently? But that's a trap. The past doesn't care about what ifs. It only cares about what is, and what is pretty great. I've built a life I'm proud of. I've become someone I genuinely like. I've learned how to be alone without feeling lonely. I've discovered that the end of one story doesn't mean the end of my story. Ironically, just as I felt like I'd completely closed that chapter, Emma reached out one last time. A simple message: I hope you're doing well. I think about you sometimes. I'm sorry for everything. I stared at the message for a moment, not out of anger, but with a strange kind of gratitude. Not because she apologized, that didn't matter anymore. But because it reminded me how far I'd come. I didn't feel the need to respond. Not because I was bitter, but because I had nothing left to say. The conversation ended long ago. She just hadn't realized it. I deleted the message without hesitation, feeling nothing but calm. If you're reading this because you've been through something similar, here's what I want you to know: betrayal says more about them than it does about you. Healing isn't about forgetting, it's about remembering without pain. You're not defined by what happened to you. You're defined by how you rise after it. The best revenge isn't proving them wrong. It's living well without them. I used to think Emma's betrayal was the worst thing that ever happened to me. But looking back now, I realize it was just a turning point, a painful one, sure, but one that set me on a path to becoming the person I am today. And you know what? I wouldn't change a thing. Sitting here now, reflecting on everything that's happened, it's hard to believe how far I've come. The person who first discovered those messages on Emma's phone feels like a distant memory, someone I knew once, but not who I am anymore. This isn't just the end of a story about betrayal, it's the beginning of a story about growth, resilience, and rediscovery. The truth is, Emma's betrayal didn't break me. It revealed me. It stripped away the comfort of routine, the illusion of security, and forced me to face the parts of myself I'd been neglecting. I thought I needed her to be happy. I thought our marriage defined my worth. I thought love was supposed to be hard work all the time, filled with compromises that chipped away at who you are. But none of that was true. I didn't lose myself when I lost her. I found myself. Looking back, here's what this journey taught me: you are not your pain. What happened to you doesn't define you. How you respond to it does. Closure is an inside job. Waiting for someone else to give you peace is like waiting for rain in a drought. You have to find it within yourself. It's okay to start over. New beginnings often come disguised as painful endings. Love shouldn't feel like a battle. Healthy love is peaceful. It's safe. It doesn't make you question your worth. You can forgive without letting someone back into your life. Forgiveness isn't about them, it's about freeing yourself from the weight of resentment. Today, my life looks nothing like it did when I was with Emma. And that's a good thing. That I wake up in a place that feels like home, not because of who's in it, but because I filled it with pieces of myself, photos from adventures, books I love, plants I somehow managed to keep alive. I spend time with people who lift me up, who know my story but never treat me like I'm broken because of it. I pursue passions I'd put on hold, not because someone discouraged me, but because I forgot how much they mattered. And yes, there's Lily. A beautiful soul who came into my life not as a savior, but as a partner, someone who adds to my happiness, not defines it. Sometimes, late at night, I think about Emma. Not with anger. Not with sadness. Just curiosity. I wonder if she ever found what she was looking for. I wonder if she thinks about me, not the version of me she left behind, but the person I've become. But here's the thing I don't need to know. Because my life isn't a reaction to hers anymore. If you've been betrayed, if you're lost in the aftermath, drowning in the what-ifs and whys, I hope my story shows you this: you will be okay. Not today, maybe not tomorrow. But one day, you'll wake up, and the pain will be quieter. You'll breathe without feeling like your chest is caving in. You'll smile, and it won't feel forced. You'll realize the person who hurt you doesn't get to occupy space in your heart anymore, not because you forgot them, but because you outgrew them. You are stronger than you know, you are more than your heartbreak, and your story isn't over. In fact, it's just beginning. It's strange to think about how far I've come since the day I first discovered Emma's betrayal. Back then, it felt like the world had ended. The life I'd built, the future I'd imagined, all of it shattered in an instant. But here's the truth I've come to understand: the world didn't end. It just changed. And sometimes, change is exactly what we need, even when it's wrapped in heartbreak. After months of silence, Emma reached out one final time. A simple message: I hope you're truly happy. I've thought a lot about us, and I just wanted to say I'm sorry for everything. I read it, felt a flicker of something, nostalgia, maybe, but not pain. Not anger. Just a quiet acknowledgement of the past. I didn't reply. Not because I was bitter. Because I didn't need to. There was nothing left to say. The chapter had been closed long before she sent that message. My life now. It's not perfect. There are still days when old memories sneak up, but they don't hold the same weight anymore. They're just echoes of a time that taught me some of the hardest, yet most valuable, lessons of my life. I've traveled to places I once only dreamed of visiting, standing in cities where no trace of my past exists, just new memories I've created on my own. I've built relationships that are rooted in authenticity, not convenience or obligation. People who know me as I am now, not who I was then. I've found purpose in the things I love, things I'd forgotten about while trying to hold together a life that wasn't meant to last. And with Lily, it's not about moving on from Emma. It's about moving forward with someone who adds to my life, not defines it. Betrayal felt like the worst thing that ever happened to me, but now, I see it was the best thing that ever happened for me. It forced me to face the parts of myself I'd ignored. It taught me the difference between being comfortable and being genuinely happy. It showed me that my value doesn't decrease just because someone else failed to see it. I used to think Emma broke me. But the truth is she didn't, she just broke the illusion of a life I'd outgrown. If you're in the middle of heartbreak, feeling like you'll never get past it, you will. It won't be easy. It won't be fast. But one day, you'll wake up, and the pain will feel smaller. You'll realize that the person who hurt you was never in control of your happiness. So, here's what I've learned: you're not defined by what happened to you. You're defined by how you rise after it. Closure doesn't come from them. It comes from you. The end of one story is just the beginning of another, and this isn't the end. It's just the next chapter.